I'm David Key. I'm one of your employees. If you grow soybeans, you're my boss. Do a little bit of what Bruce did. Soybean yields were just all over the board. Well, we could say this year in 2021, if your farm hit D4 status, which is extreme drought, it didn't matter what you did, it got hammered. D3, we had some success stories, and some guys got hammered. When you look at the drought rating, D0 is abnormally dry, D1 is moderate drought, D2 is drought, it's drought, moderate drought, extreme drought, and exceptional drought. D4 is exceptional drought. D4 made us look kind of reminded me of living in Texas in the late 1990s, where the entire state was all burned up. But getting back to my comments, D3, D0, D1. We had some guys that had field averages of over 85 bushels per acre, especially in the southwest corner. It's like the yokel said, if you could borrow last year's water, you had to prevent acreage. You did well in the drought. We learned some lessons from it. Now, a few little points that came up yesterday. Have you heard about the chlorpyrifos ban? It's not a true ban. EPA said, all right, for feedstuff, the maximum residue level is 0. Meaning you can apply it, but if that load tests anything besides 0, it gets pulled, and everything with it gets pulled, which is essentially banning it. The Minnesota Soybean Growers Association has joined another group of people, organizations, and they're suing EPA over this because of poor procedure. They're not adhering to the procedure of the FIFRA Act. So you'll hear more about that. Who's heard about the enlist label extension? All right. Two things that's popped up in that you're going to hear more about. Your limit, there is not a calendar limit, but instead of going through application through R2, it's through R1. So when you see it flower, you better make sure you get that last application on for enlist. Second, this is kind of hidden in the bushes. Do you have a runoff mitigation plan in place? I'm serious right now. Who's going to use enlist next year? Do you have a runoff mitigation plan in place? You cannot use enlist. That's one of the things. It's kind of like the dicamba label. You have to be contingent, to follow the label correctly. You have to fill out those reports within 72 hours of application. Otherwise, you're off label. You don't have that mitigation plan in place. If you apply enlist, you're off label. When you get caught, only if something goes wrong. So these are some things that you need to remember. You're going to hear more about both of these as time goes on. Palmer amaranth. 3 new counties had Palmer amaranth this year. Goodhue, Polk, and Clay. How far away from Clay County? How far away from Polk? It's coming. It's here, actually. When you look at it, it's got the pointer on it. Right there. Polk County, we have a business who compost screenings. They analyzed the screenings and found Palmer amaranth seed in it. Clay County, an extension county agent was visiting family, found Palmer, identified the source of the chicken feed. Goodhue County, this is the one that's kind of scary. Found by two crop consultants in two different locations. The crop consultants work for two different organizations. They don't know where it came from. More on that later. Basically, in all cases, the NDAs have reviewed them and put in a mitigation plan to eradicate the palmer, and the plants were pulled back and incinerated. We're still got this under control as it's not widespread. The palmer's here. What do you know about palmer?
It's the weed from hell.
What's that?
It's the weed from hell.
No, it's from Chillicothe, Texas. Palmer makes water hemp look like a sole grower. They both share this lot of, water hemp and palmer share a lot of similarities. They're both dioecious. Both of them are able to shake off herbicide applications if they're taller than 6 inches. It just takes palmer a lot less time to get there. If you haven't done it, get those down. Palmer's pretty easy. It's basically if it's over 8 foot tall, it's palmer. It looks like a pigweed. It's no pubescent, so it's smooth. And the petiole, the stem that holds the leaf, is longer than the leaf. And MDA has a palmer specs page, so be familiar with that. Water hemp management, we've got 2 projects in this area. This is the wrong title. Evaluation of micro rate crop safety and efficacy on water hemp. These are not micro rates. These are low end rates. They're labeled rates, but they're on the low end side of things. Andrew Luck is a PI for this. He had 3 studies, and we're going to cover one of them. Target objectives: determine crop safety, heavy micro-rate Jenkins, the treatments pre-only, PPO, non-PPO susceptible soybeans. Kind of got dry in Renville County. We didn't see any damage from any of the treatments. We'll be running this again next year. Our model like this, we submitted a proposal for it. The research team is looking favorably on it. Read this. Next Gen AG LLC should be on the handout. You can get all the reports from that online today. It's a fairly extensive study, focused on regular, blanket, warm residual, flex, where you're looking at 2 different applications, at planting or at planting in post. So we're seeing a lot of different comparisons here. These 3 had less than 85% weed control at day 68. That's less than 90, less than 95. These are the 8 treatments. The combination of at planting or at post. Variety of costs. You're still looking at good water hemp control throughout. You don't have to have dicamba to control water hemp. You don't have to have 2,4-D to control water hemp. What you do have to have is a deep pocketbook because it's not cheap. Its best overall is at $46 an acre for the chemical alone. When you look at these combinations, this Valor and Warren combinations gives industry a heartburn. Still on the label, it's still legal to apply. You can't tank mix them. But it does give industry a heartburn. They're seeing a lot of industry is reporting damage, crop damage when you mix those two. So it gets to be, how big is your water hemp problem? Is the water hemp problem big enough that you can absorb, take the hit from the crop damage? I won't pick on you a little bit. You remember when we used to go out there with Cobra inspector, and then decide not to go look at it for 2 weeks? So some of the situations we may be looking at. With water hemp, it is a powerful weed, and it's become the #1 weed in most of Minnesota soybeans. As Devlin Serenge's study shows the different pigweeds out here. We got a lot of pigweeds, water amaranth species. This is the one that scares us. This is the one that gives us the biggest heartbeat right here. When we looked at it as a problem plant, in 2019, they did a survey of 166 respondents. This is the U of M extension. Water hemp was by far and away the biggest problem weed. Followed closely by giant ragweed, then common lines bordering common ragweed. The other three, these are probably going to be our not-hairs sometime down the road, as we figure out how to handle water hemp and giant ragweed. First project Devlin did was to pull herbicide, get people to send in herbicide-resistant water hemp. He went and collected the weeds. The red dots are 2020 samples. They're mainly in the south central part of Minnesota. That was his first year. About 21 samples there. 2021, this year, we've got about 160 samples added to it. Much larger area. What he did was grew out the seeds and then screened them against 1X and 3X doses of Raptor, Roundup, Atrazine, Liberty, Flexstar, Callisto, Enlist 1, and Extendamax. What did he find? Well, we've only got the data for the 2020 weed samples collected. We had no resistance to dicamba, 2,4-D, or glufosinate. One sample showed up with mesotron or Callisto. 3 samples with formycin and atrazine. 66% of the samples were resistant to glyphosate. All of these samples were resistant to Raptor. Raptor is a waste of time to apply in these herbicide-resistant varieties. This is 30 days after application. A list of 3X, Extendamax, and 1X. What's the, yes ma'am. I'm supposed to hit my mouth with this one. What's the most obvious thing you see there? They ain't dead. We're seeing resistance in others to dicamba being reported in other states. We're seeing this is evidence that we're going to see coming from the list if we shoot long enough. When we look at what they're resistant to, ALS inhibitor, which is a Raptor, everything's resistant to the ALS inhibitor. Again, this is 2020 seeds. EPSPS are Roundup. 8 samples were resistant to Roundup and Raptor. Roundup and Raptor again. So that's 13 of the 20 samples that were collected resistant to Roundup. 3-way resistant to PSI2 and PPO. Now I have 3 of those. Then there's these 4 ways. Right. You've got herbicide resistance to 4 different groups. What's stuff to clean that field up with? Back to cultivation. We're going to have to look at some other than chemical methods of control, cultural control. We're also looking at something happening here. I don't have this slide, I saw this last week. A gentleman out of Illinois was talking about metabolic resistance. And there's 2 different types of resistance to deal with. There's target site, which means you change the target that the herbicide impacts in the plant. That's easily fought by just changing the herbicide group. You get it with another chemical. Metabolic is saying instead of going after the target group right here, we're going after the power source right there. It goes something structural with the way the chemical is metabolized in the plant itself. This is a whole new ball game. And my gut feeling, these 4 ways are a result of metabolic resistance. And there's nothing that we can guarantee will work on controlling a plant that's already established metabolic resistance. It's found a way to metabolize different chemicals and render them less dangerous, maybe even harmless. Keep your eyes open on these guys. Devlin's put in for an extension of this. He will be requesting seed again next year. So in 2022, if you find a water hemp plant in your soybeans that's you've hit it with herbicides, bag it up and send the seed to Devlin, or at least contact him. Here's the distribution. Continue. Again, he's going to continue. The second study he did is post the herbicide applications and timing in list 3 beans, looking at glyphosate, glufosinate, 2,4-D, and conventional herbicides. What's up high and when? What's the sequence? His application went pre-plant, pre-emerge, early post, which is V1, mid-post, which is V3, late post, which is just before the R1, just as it gets into R1. This is about where the legal limit's going to be in next year. Came up with 16 treatments. Warrant. No pre-merge package or pre-merge package warrant. Liberty. 1 application. Liberty 2 applications. Liberty in list 1 to Durango. Liberty in list 1 to Magnum. No Liberty in list 1 to Durango. Yada yada. And then follow from Liberty. Same down here. Number 9 is the untreated control. Weed density, pre-emerge versus no pre-emerge. We've got a pretty good scattering of weeds in there with no package, with no pre-emerge control. Very limited weeds with pre-emerge. This is the water hemp control. Sent water hemp control at the end of the season. This is your pre-package. This is a no pre-merge package. One-time application of Liberty. See what the pre-merge package did for your Liberty. What to do without a pre-merge package. When I look at it, I really need to stop here and just look at these. And I got to learn how to control this button better. What that slide showed us is the pre-merge package amped up the effectiveness of all post-merge treatments. Look at this slide, we're move over to Dean Alvis material. Look at distribution of sudden death syndrome in soybeans. 3 years ago, we would sit down and say, all right, there's actually be 4 years ago. This is a southern Minnesota problem. It has steadily moved up from 2002 of this northwest corner to 2020, was found about right there. It's a little further north of you guys. If it's not here, it's coming. So this is something we're seeing with it. Sudden death trend, some facts about SDS. It's a causal pathogen. It's for Euceromal vertiform. Yield loss can be heavy, greater than 50%, but it's usually in pockets across the field. Losses depend on when the plants are infected, extended problem in the field, weather, and soybean variety. Current PMPs, know your fields. Which one are the greatest risks? Scouting all this. Use resistant varieties. Use seed treatments. Right now, Illegal and Saltro are the two recommended for fungicides. Heads up to the biological. Seed treatments widely marketed or yada yada. He did a study, Rosemont and Waseca, phosphoniculated, inoculated, irrigated. Treatments were untreated. Base treatment, illegal with base treatment, Saltro with base treatments, heads up with base treatments. Partially resistant, primarily susceptible. Varieties, and here's the rates that he used. This kind of tells a story. Here's the resistant, here's the susceptible, this is the disease index. Here's the base. This is primarily the base is controlled in Pythium of Phytophthora rhizotonia. Resistance helped. Heads up, which is a biological in the base. Resistance made the bigger difference, but there was some impact from heads up. Levo, Saltro. Notice that on the Saltro, the susceptible actually had a lower disease to the rating or index than the resistant variety. The yields, Saltro plus base is 75 bushels, 64. 2021 results this year. Base, heads up, illegal, none. This 39, Saltro. What we're finding is that we can use a seed treatment to control SDS and reduce the impact of SDS. If you got it, it's going to be worth the package. It's going to be a lot more affordable at $13 beans than $8 beans. It's roughly, the Saltro is about $21 an acre for chemical cost. Final points, continues to spread in Minnesota, North Dakota. Scouting, scouting, scouting. Manage with resistant varieties where available, which is going to be one of the problems we have up here. We really don't have a variety test program focused on SDS in this part of the world. Manage with select seed treatments. Here's the fun part. One of the little projects we've got funded is with Southwest Minnesota State. One of the things that we noticed and we're discussing certified crop advisors. Number one problem with it, their students aren't aware of this certified crop advisor and the career opportunities. Gentleman in a pioneer hat, the USCCA, have you heard about it? That's what we've got going on. They've heard about it. This is a real problem we've got with certified crop advisors. A lot of folks don't hear about this situation or the opportunity until they're employed. So we're trying to get students to do, and then when I talk to the employers, one of the complaints they have is it's taking their employees 2 and 3 times to pass the test. So we're working with the Southwest Minnesota State to help identify weaknesses in the agronomy curriculum so that their students can pass the CCA exam on the first time around. The way that Adam Alford did this, he was an agronomy professor. He had a series of study sessions for the students. Now, their first time around, which was last year, they had 6 students take 12 exams. And the 2 exams are the international and the state CCA. Of the 6 students, they had 1 student pass the state exam. Adam went back and redrew his program, identified the weakness. He had 12 students take it this next go around. 5 students passed both exams, and 1 student passed 1 exam. So he's found out that he's identified weaknesses in it, and we're up in the ante. He's now reevaluating his agronomy classes and working with his other professors. So if they get the material the first time, and we're really enhancing the efficacy of these study sessions. And he's working with the CCA Certified Crop Advisor program so that the students can take those exams at Marshall permanently. Now, one of the things that we've got with this, and I'm asking you guys, we'd like to start talking with other institutes about doing something similar. So if you've got contacts in U of M Crookston, some of the junior colleges that have got agronomy programs, send them my way. Thank you very much for your time. Are there any questions? Yes, sir.
Can you comment on the recent Enlist Duo?
Oh, why did Enlist Duo get banned in this part of it? I got some comments, and then I've got some Bruce comments. What it showed was that the 2,4-D product was not a particular concern with the endangered species across the state of Minnesota. These 6 counties in this part, because it's not Enlist 1 that's banned, it's only Enlist Duo. It's glyphosate. There's something about glyphosate impacting some endangered species in this particular 6-county area. Now somebody says, well, why didn't they take the tank mixing option of it off? Because that wasn't up for review. You can tank mix 2,4-D and Roundup. You can tank mix 2,4-D and generic glyphosate. That's a different label. What they could act on was this particular label within this dual. What I'm going to say for you guys in this region, start anticipating some issues with application of glyphosate anywhere in these counties. As these products go up for relabeling, that's when they're going to have to face this endangered species act. Now, if we can figure out what endangered species that they're talking about, then we can start looking at ways to mitigate the impact of glyphosate on those products. So that's what I'm just going to use the generic weed, meaning all the staff down in Mankato, we're trying to figure this out. All right, what's the problem? Which plant is it impacting? And again, they're not putting. We don't have near the off-target program, off-target application issues that dicamba's got with the list. Got a 30-foot buffer. on susceptible crops. It's not nowhere near as much as it's, you know, dicamba is 300 foot buffer on certain susceptible crops. So it's not the off-target movement, but it is a runoff movement. And the other thing I can say is be glad you're not in eastern Oklahoma, because they got them both. The eastern half of Oklahoma, they just got them all. But we're going to see the Endangered Species Act, or enforcement, let me rephrase that, consideration of endangered species and all relabeling from this point on.